Hey, thanks for coming back to the channel. From time to time, I run across writings from other people, and I don't like to reinvent the wheel, you know. But I'm going to read an entire response to a quora. If you're not familiar, quora is where you can post questions and then a bunch of people can respond. This was a question about uh, what could be done, what could be done to reduce um, the gun violence in America, and the response was awesome. The answer to the question is awesome. I'm going to read it to you in its entirety. And what's remarkable to me is that this response is from a person in Australia. Australia. So this is a person who has been following America, right? America and America's gun Second Amendment, because whether we know it or not, Australia, nor any other country, gives the citizens the right to self-defense or to be armed in any way to defend themselves. But I couldn't have said this any better. Uh, so so here goes. Again, this is from a person named Jason Rennie in Australia. And the question is, can I get a pro-gun, conservative's sincere view on how to stop school shootings in the U.S.? Can it really be done without introducing strict gun laws? And the answer is, and starts from Mr. Rennie, sure. The answer is twofold. One is short term and one is long term. But first, let me offer a slightly different perspective. I'm a pro Second Amendment Australian. Remember, they don't have a Second Amendment. We lack the right to self-defense you guys have. I'm 6'3" and a man. Most people will just leave me alone. Plus, I don't live in a bad neighborhood. But we recently had a female comedian stalked and murdered here. She didn't even have the option to defend herself from her attacker, who was bigger and stronger. When you disarm law-abiding, you empower the predators. So when you want to talk about, quote, strict gun laws, close quote, and, quote, gun bans, close quote, please understand that the price you pay is more muggings, more rapes, more murders, etc. The strong are empowered to predate on the weak. You might think the trade-off is worth it, but understand it is a trade-off. If you think more rapes and muggings is worth the price of a gun ban, then so be it. But don't pretend that it's free. Secondly, you won't ban guns in America. You already have huge reams of laws. Criminals just ignore them. Nobody, after a shooting, ever proposes a law that would have actually worked to stop the shooter. Just disarm and harass the law-abiding. Never mind the gross failure of law enforcement with a known shooter in the recent Florida case. He's talking about Brevard County, the 300. He telegraphed it. This is the shooter. He telegraphed it, and they just ignored it. Fix that problem first before you want to harass law-abiding gun owners and render them defenseless from predators. But on to your question. The short-term fix is really simple. What do you notice about the recent shooters? I never hear anybody remark on it because it seems really significant to me. They, the shooters, are being arrested and standing trial. What does that tell you? The Columbine shooters didn't stand trial. They shot themselves. They were on a suicide mission. The current raft of shooters are not on a suicide mission. They expect to survive and they expect to get away. They aren't the brightest bulbs. If you harden the targets in a few simple ways, you can turn their rampage into a suicide mission. This will deter most of them, if not all of them, based on the current pattern. And that is, the current pattern is they expect to survive and get away. If they know they are going to die going in, and that isn't part of their plan, they aren't going to do it. So how do you harden the target? What places are never sites of mass shootings? Here are 3. Gun ranges, police stations, and donut shops. That was cute. Why not? Because the victims can and will shoot back. So, immediately outlaw all gun-free zones in schools, cinemas, etc. Make it mandatory that if you want to have a gun-free zone, you're going to have significantly trained and heavily armed security on site to solve the problem in places like the White House, for example. I think this will largely solve the problem. The Aurora shooting, and this is important to remember, this is Mel talking here. The Aurora shooter drove past 3 cinemas that allowed concealed carry and shot up the one that didn't. In Florida, 2 or 3 of the teachers who died were concealed carry permit holders who could have been legally carrying, except the school is a gun-free zone. Would they have stopped the shooter? I don't know. But they would just pray when they were legally disarmed by the state, and other shootings have been stopped before they became mass shootings by armed security or bystanders. You don't have to arm every teacher. Just allow the ones that want to carry to do so. I'd also mandate firing of any teacher that objects to the policy change. With the prospect of armed resistance, you will stop anybody who is not on a suicide mission. And those on a suicide mission, you'll have a better chance of dealing with it before it becomes a massacre. So, there is a solution you can do immediately to harden targets and make it harder for would-be shooters. This will cut down a lot of shootings. Then there is a longer-term problem to address. The guns aren't the problem. People bent on mayhem and murder can stab people, make explosives, poison gas, run people over with a car, etc. All of these are popular options with terrorists and other crazies around the world. You can find instructions for waging insurgency war on the internet easily enough, and they'll tell you how to make all manner of explosives from what you find around the house. The problem is you have a collection of people who feel entitled to kill other people and take out their misgivings in bloody, murderous rampages. What do they all have in common? Well, obviously a nihilistic disregard for the sanctity of life, but nearly all of the mass shooters lack fathers. This is an epidemic problem in America, and being raised by a single mother is an indicator for all manner of social pathologies. This deficit can be made up by the investment in the child of other interested substitute father figures, but it takes 3 or 4 of these per child. You can get that when you have a tiny divorce rate, and most single mothers are widows, but you can't do it with a 50% fatherless rate. This needs to be addressed, not just because of mass shootings, but because it is destructive to all kids and puts them behind the 8 ball in life, except in the cases of the worst fathers. Any non-violently abusive, intact family, even if mom and dad yell and scream a lot, is better than a broken family. So, long term, the U.S. needs to get back to a culture of life, personal responsibility for behavior and the culture of marriage and families. Unfortunately, this is tremendously difficult and will require the whole-scale dismantling of the welfare state and rollback of the sexual revolution. That underwrites all of the current fatherless problems. It will also require rejection of a lot of the statist nonsense that animates so much of it, and return to churches and religion, because you need a foundation to underwrite that culture of life. You won't get it from a lot of consumerism and leftist politics as substitute religion. Now, I'm going to editorialize. I disagree with that. I am an atheist. I don't think religion is necessary at all. And this is where I disagree with this particular author. So I'll continue. So there you go. A solution from a pro to a conservative that doesn't require banning a single firearm and takes the problem seriously of how to stop the violence in the short term, but also addresses the long-term problem. So there you have it. Some really good thoughts from a Second Amendment supporter in Australia. Now, many of you have similar feelings, and I had to be straight up with you on my feelings on some of that this particular author proposed. So, with 4 shopping days left till Christmas, if you like the content of this channel, please subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell icon. And as always, I like to hear your comments because they're always great. The ones that have charged with emotion and the ones that are thoughtful and all of that. You guys are wonderful. You guys and ladies, because I notice them out there. All right. So, happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas to those who are into that and that particular holiday spirit. But happy holidays to everyone who has some other kind of thing that goes on in this pagan time period, getting close to the winter equinox. I had to put that in there. All right. As always, thanks for watching, and carry on.